Indian strength has been more into research into the world of spirit. Both have to come together, both have to be integrated for the world to evolve, for the world to become one, because that is what the future of humanity is, to become one humanity, to become one existence, to find that unity within. So another strength of India is what I think, if I remember, Gangotri mentioned the colors when she said like holy colors, colors of holy, which naturally brings the sense of diversity. Diversity does not mean, or difference does not mean that it has to be, that there is a hierarchy or there is discrimination. Actually, that makes things more rich than a same oneness. But we also have to understand, Indian spirit also tells us that diversity makes sense only when there is an underlying unity, underlying oneness. So right from our spiritual thought to our political structures, we unknowingly or knowingly have accepted this principle of oneness, that one that brings all the many, all the multiples together. So that the diversity in unity is like a fundamental core principle of Indian way of looking at things. Because it is the truth of life. If you take a look at any tree, just look outside the window wherever you are, any tree, um, hundreds of thousands of leaves on a tree. No two leaves are ever alike. Yet there is something that makes them one, that they are part of one tree. So this idea of multiplicity that is part of the oneness is another aspect of Indian spirit that often gets ignored. Now, what happens is in field of international relations or diplomatic conversations, we are only concerned about the outer body of the nation and the practical socio-economic political formulations, and not go into deeper understanding of what makes each nation different. But we forget that it is the inner temperament that actually gets expressed in the way outer things are put together. So there, I'll take a very simple example. For at least 2,000, 3,000 years, there are, in India, there is this interesting phenomenon that has been going on where same stories are being told and retold and retold and retold in different ways, through different means, through different expressions, in different languages, using different means, different instruments of expression, and yet people have not gotten bored out of that. Why is that? Can anybody guess what stories those are and why we haven't gotten bored from those stories? Can anybody guess?
Ma'am, I don't know, but I just feel
Take
that
a guess.
those. I feel that those stories are more of spiritual. Those stories are secular stories. I believe.
Okay, I'll give you a
Ma'am,
hint. Yes,
I
Gangotri.
think those are the stories that keep on repeating throughout the humanity, just not to us or this particular country, but all over the world. And
Okay.
these stories can help you, you know, work in a better way or find a better solution to the current situation.
Okay, okay, I understand. I got it. Anything else? And then I'll share my response. Anybody else would like to say something? Okay, let me ask you this question. Who among you saw the movie Bahubali 1 and 2?
I did, ma'am.
You did?
I
Okay.
well,
You did too? Okay. Anyone else who did not see? You also did. Anybody who did not see? Dr. Sumed, Dr. Goswami?
Yes, ma'am. So,
Saw that. Okay. And I'm guessing Dr. Meg probably also saw that. I saw it. In fact, I think I've seen each of them twice, once in the cinema and once at home. Why was that movie such a huge blockbuster in the sense that it broke all the records up till at that point? What was unique about that, which probably had been missing from at least the Hindi cinema? I would not say other languages, but at least the Hindi cinema up until that point. For a very long time, something had been missing. Why even a film that was not even made in Hindi broke all the records of Hindi cinema? And I don't like to use the word Bollywood because that is again like a it's like a corruption or an imitation of Hollywood. And it was something started by only the Indian media. Some journalists started using that. Nobody who is actually serious about Indian cinema uses the word Bollywood or Tollywood or Mollywood or other woods because we need to find our own identity. All the big actors, they would say, and I'm particularly taking the example of cinema because I want to connect it with something else from our culture in just a minute. What was it about Bahubali that made such a huge impression on such a large mass of people? And related to that, it would be the question that you might have heard this news item from last year. Remember when the very first time, the first lockdown, 21-day lockdown was announced in 2020, and Doordarshan had started a repeat telecast of the show Ramayan, and how again it broke all the records of number of people tuning in to that particular channel and watching the show that was made 30, 40 years ago with not so good production quality. We can say over dramatic acting, over emotional stuff. Most of the people, younger people today, don't necessarily connect with that kind of acting. And yet, the show was hugely popular. And this was like 30, 40 years after the show had already broken record when it first came out. What does it tell us about the Indian mind? Would anybody like to take a guess?
Veda is one of the most iconic and mythologically uh,
Okay.
believed stories. And so, yeah, one of the reasons was because a lot of people believe in it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the second reason would also be that because of lockdown, everybody was at home and there was a lot
Yeah.
of time, and in order to spend that time doing something, there was this show which gained popularity again.
Mm. Okay. Okay. I'll buy that. Anything else? Anybody would like to add?
Ma'am, a lot of people see all the mythological stories as something to learn from, something that is a part of them, and yeah, it's always new. It's always created multiple times, but everybody is willing to go and watch it because of the plot and how the current generation is seeing this, their perspective on it.
Yes. So, do you now if you were to think about it, we don't have time right now, but maybe at some point you could think about what was there in the stories of Ramayana and what was there in Bahubali that was common. There is something uniquely common between the two, which is the sense, the word that is again very unique to the Indianness of India. That is the word called dharma or dharma. There is this sense of dharma that comes through when we hear or read or watch stories from Ramayana or from Mahabharata, or when we watch films like Bahubali, where there is this clear sense of dharma becoming victorious over adharma, that which is non-dharma, adharma. So what is this dharma? That in order to understand India, we have to understand this thing called dharma. It's again a very, 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 very subtle thing. What has happened is that in India, we have confused the word dharma with another English word called religion. Dharma is not same as religion. Dharma could have some aspects of religion, but it is not religion. Dharma has the aspects of ethics, but it is not purely mental ethics. Dharma has the aspect of duty, but it is not merely a mental idea of duty. The whole history, the whole story of India can be understood as a story of dharma becoming victorious over that which is adharma. So in our, to make it more simpler for our understanding in English language, we could say dharma is that which establishes order. So there is another word in Sanskrit which is called rhythm. You all heard the English word rhythm, right? The rhythm of music, the rhythm of life.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? The original word from which the word English word rhythm comes is rhythm. So you've all heard of Vedas, right? Vedas are considered as the original, the oldest scripture of knowledge that there is in the entire world, for the entire humanity. Those are the earliest recorded compendiums of knowledge. So in the Veda, we have this word called rhythm, which means cosmic order, where everything in this entire creation, in this entire cosmos, is placed in the right order, in the right way, in the right place, and everything becomes harmonious. That is the cosmic order that we should seek. Dharma is the means for us to establish that right order in our life, in individual life, in our collective life, as a society, as a culture, as a nation, in our family, in our organizations. So you are all part of a university. What is the dharma of being a student or an educator in a university? What is the dharma of a university as an institution? What is the dharma of the institution that I am a part of? Each individual life, each collective life will have its own unique dharma. And behind all that will be, like again, behind all these multiple dharmas will be one eternal dharma, which in Indian tradition we call as Sanatana Dharma, timeless, eternal Dharma, which is nothing but that rhythm. In connection with rhythm is another word called Satya, truth. Satyam, Ritam, Brihat. These are the three terms that are used again and again in the Vedic literature, which means Satya means truth, Ritam means order, right, right order. So we'll just take the right. And Brihat means vast. So Satyam, Ritam, Brihat, the truth, the right, the vast. The deepest purpose of all life has to be, of all cosmic universal life, has to be to arrive at that state where one is in a state of complete truth, complete right order, and as vast as this entire creation. So once we have attained that, all the difference will automatically disappear. All the discrimination will automatically appear. Nobody will be yours, mine, this, that. All the conflicts will naturally disappear. So the Indian thought always emphasized that each one of us has to follow a life of dharma, which slowly, gradually, over a period of time, helps one establish in oneself the true order, the true harmony, and that true vastness within, where I will not feel separate from other people in my life. I will not feel separate from not only other human beings, I will not feel separate from other creations. So I will feel that oneness with all the nature, all the other beings, the animals, all the other pranis that we see. So naturally, there will be no need for me to exploit other life forms, no need for me to exploit nature. So Indian spirit always emphasized an inner growth in order to become a better human being, in order to become a better individual. So dharma becomes the means through which we grow inwardly. So if I am a wife, if I am a mother, if I am a daughter, if I am a sister, if I am a teacher, what is the dharma of being a wife? What is the dharma of being a mother? What is the dharma of being a teacher? All those dharmas I have to constantly find and fulfill in me. This is another very important aspect of Indian thought. Is it making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay, so since I brought the example of films, let me, so far we have, what if you understand what I've been sharing is about the soul of the Indian culture, right? The highest thought, the highest philosophical, spiritual thought that our ancestors have come up with. That is what is the soul of the culture is. I can go on and tell you many stories about that. Let me just actually tell you one story, which will tell you how our, which is also connected to why Indians are so fond of movies, why we love our movies so much, because we've always been a land of storytellers. And to know India, there can be many ways, but three important ways could be, for example, one is to travel because it's hugely diverse, but not just travel as a tourist, but travel to really become, to get a sense of what that place is, to feel the soul of that place, to feel that true nature of that place. And particularly travel in the Himalayas, because that's where a lot of our rishis found the highest, the deepest truth. The other way to learn about or to know the spirit of India is through stories of India. So here is one story from our earliest literature. So there were Vedas and there was something called Upanishads. Maybe some of you have heard this term, Upanishads. And then there is Itihasas. Ramayana and Mahabharats are called as the Itihasas. Itihas word means not history in the ordinary English language. Itihas simply means itihasa. This is how it was. So the writers, the composers of Ramayana and Mahabharata were not arguing or not interested in the scholarly discussion whether it's true history or mythology. This is the English understanding, the Western understanding of history, mythology, history versus mythology. Indian mind always said, this is how it was. There was some event that had happened around which a lot of stories get added on, because the purpose of the composers of Mahabharata and Ramayana was to bring the knowledge that was deeply hidden in Vedas and Upanishads to the ordinary people. And to the ordinary people, stories are the best way to convey the deepest thought. As some of you said, when I said, why was Ramayana so popular, the TV serial, exactly, you caught on to that. So you understand that how, for a lot of people, stories convey the best means to understand the profoundest, the deepest knowledge. So here is one story that comes in one of the Upanishads. There are many, many hundreds of Upanishads. Some say the main Upanishads are the 108, but out of which 10 or 12 are considered as the primary Upanishads. So in one of the Upanishads, there is a story called story of Da, Da, Da. Just say one word, one syllable, Da, D-A, you can write it like that. So what is this story? The story is that there was once this teacher called Brahaspati. Brahaspati is the teacher in the Vedic Upanishadic literature, the guru, who teaches deepest truths. So 3 people went to this teacher and asked for the deepest knowledge. So these 3 were representatives of 3 kinds of beings. One was the representative of gods, the devas. The other was the representative of the humanity, the human beings, so the man. And the third was the representative of the asuras, the rakshasas, the undivine, the non-divine beings. So these 3, the devas, the human being, and the danavas, the rakshasa, the asura, these 3 representatives went to this teacher and asked for the truest knowledge, the deepest knowledge. And after a lot of waiting, the teacher only said one syllable, Da. And then he asked, have you understood? So they were all thinking, let's see. We have waited 12 years, 15 years, 20 years, 36 years, and all he tells us is Da. And finally, after some reflection, some meditation, the person who was representing the gods, devas, he said, yes, I have understood. So he said, okay, what does this word Da means to you? What does this sound Da means to you? He says the word Da means, wait, I'm forgetting now. I should remember this story, right? So this is how a teacher forgets. What is that Da? Okay, I'll come to the devas later. Maybe this particular deva forgot also. So then comes the human beings, the representative of the humanity, the Nara. So this teacher asks, what have you understood from this word the? So this person says, the student says, I have understood from the means Daya, Datta. What does that mean? Datta means to give, to become generous, to offer. So he said yes. Then he goes to the third, which is the Danav, which is the asuras, the rakshasas. What have you understood from the word the? And the asura says Dayadhvam. Dayadhvam means compassion, to have a sense of compassion. Oh yes, so then he goes back to our Devata, because now the Devata has remembered what he had learned from Daya, from the word the. What he had learned was Daman, the from Daman, which is self-control, self-restraint. Because devas, those who are already of the godly nature, who have acquired all the good qualities, if they do not have a sense of self-control, they will become very arrogant, very, like lost in their own goodness. They can become hugely egoistic of their own goodness. So a sense of self-control is important. For the individual, for the human beings, the sense of generosity to give, because most of the times what we human beings are trying to do is acquire knowledge, acquire wealth, acquire possessions, have one car. Once we have greater means, buy another car, buy a bigger house, acquire, to share, to become generous. That is the datta, the sense of giving that the human beings have learned. And those who have the more asuric qualities, those who already are not evolved in their inner nature, who are more egoistic, who are more full of themselves, they need to become more compassionate towards others. So that is the Dayadham. So with one syllable, he taught 3 classes of people the deepest truth towards which they should proceed, towards which the quality which they should develop in themselves. So it's through stories like this that a lot of deepest truths have been taught. And Ramayana and Mahabharata did an excellent job of bringing many of these truths together through the story. Now, this did not just happen just because, in 2020 we had lockdown and we just thought we should do it. In 1980, when Ramayana serial first came about, when most of you were not even born, all of you probably were not even born, you are so young, but I remember even at that time, it had broken all the records. And I have written a small research paper on this many years back. When I was living in the States, I was surprised to see how much people in the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, in cinema studies, in media studies in the West were amazed at this phenomenon of how a TV show could be the reason why the whole country comes to a standstill on Sunday mornings. This used to telecast on Sunday mornings. And they came up with theories after theories as to why that is. And at least I studied about 50 research papers on that, and there are many more. And I felt that none of them could actually understand the Indian feel for why we were so drawn to this story. Why? Because this is in our DNA. We love stories that speak of the highest truths because we are always, there is this thirst in us to try and progress, to become better from where we are, not to be satisfied with our nature. All of you probably understand Hindi, right? We don't want to say, aisa hi hai aur aisa hi chalta rahega. This is a very, very non-Indian way to understand life. Kuch bhi nahi badlega is not the Indian way. A true Indian way would be, yes, it is like this today, but it can become better. This constant thirst for progress. I may not have all the qualities of Rama or Krishna or Hanuman or anyone whose stories I admire, but if I really try and evolve, I can get maybe 1/100th of that goodness in me. This is the Indian spirit that these stories are able to give us. So we cry with them, we laugh with them, and we kind of grow in our own inner nature with them. So how many of you know that the oldest text that ever was written on aesthetics, on theater, was also written in India? The first play, the first theater ever produced was also in India. Isn't it interesting? Why we are a land of storytellers? And how many of you also know that all the arts, the best way to understand a culture often could be the mind of the culture through its arts. All the stories of all the fine arts, how this fine art of painting originated, how the art of music originated, all of them find a connection with the highest, the deepest source, that is the divine, the truth. Isn't it interesting about India? Do you know which was the first play ever produced? Can anybody take a guess? Are there people here who are interested in theater, in drama? Movies, of course. Movies is just another, modern medium which carries the same tradition of theater everywhere in all cultures. So what is this particular text I'm thinking of, and what is the first play? Can anybody take a guess?
Ma'am, I'm not sure, but we have studied Natya Shastra as one of the basis of the platform for dramatics and play. So basically, it becomes the guidelines of
Yes.
Theater.
Yes, yes. And Natya Shastra is actually the oldest text on aesthetics, not only on drama, but on all art forms. That is the oldest text. And interestingly, in the Natya Shastra, which has about 6,000 verses or so, there is also a mention of how prior to Natya Shastra, other traditions had been following certain practices on how art or how theater should be put together. So even prior to that, there may have been a tradition. Natya Shastra actually speaks of itself as the fifth Veda. So there, the Veda is one, but it has been classified into four. So you probably all know the names: Rig Ved, Sam Ved, Yajurved, and Atharvaved, right? Natya Ved is considered as the fifth Veda. Mahabharat is also considered as the fifth Veda. So why this fifth Veda tradition happened to be is, this is how the story of Natya Shastra goes. Again, everything is connected with the deepest, the highest, the soul of the culture in India, which is again what makes India different from other cultural traditions. The story goes that once all the gods living in their higher planes of God looked down on the earth and saw that people were very unhappy. People who had forgotten how to live the life of dharma. Remember, we were talking of dharma, living the life of right order, in the right harmony, doing our best duty in the right way. So when people stopped living in dharma and started becoming more adharmic in their approach towards one another, towards their life, towards their families, towards rest of the community, towards nature, and there was a lot of unhappiness, agony, pain, suffering. So the gods said that we should do something. We should help the humanity. And the gods have their leader, who is this god called Indra. In the Veda, this name comes again and again. This Indra, in the deepest psychological, symbolic sense, represent the divine mind. When the mind is enlightened by the light of the divine, light of the God, then that becomes Indra. We have these senses, right? Senses in Indian language, Sanskrit is called Indriya. So Indra, the mind, the divine mind, is the one that rules over the senses. So this Indra, in stories it has been personified, but that's the symbolic meaning of it. So Indra goes to the god who has, in Indian tradition, is supposed to be the creator, which is the Brahma, the Brahma. So they go to Brahma, and Indra is leading the battalion, and he says, see how all the human beings are so unhappy. They need something which can make them happy, and at the same time, which can teach them how to live a life of dharma, how to live a right life, a good life, a true life. So can you do something? So Brahma says, let me think about it. And Brahma says, let there be natya. Natya is the word used for drama. Natya is a word that means to act. Nata is the actor. Nat means to act. So let there be that art form which not only entertains, makes people happy, makes people joy. Natya came to be. Drama came to be. And then he finds this Muni. Muni is the one who is living in one's inner silence, because only in that silence we are able to receive the highest knowledge. That Muni, the name that has been given in our tradition, is called Bharat. Bharat Muni, and he gives them this charge, this duty of this work of composing a Natya Shastra, composing a Veda, composing a Shastra. Shastra means a treatise of knowledge, a systemized book of knowledge. So something that can help people grow in their consciousness, evolve, and at the same time do it in a happy, joyful way. So that's how drama came to be. But Bharat Muni says in Natya Shastra very clearly, Natya is one art form that has to bring in all the other art forms in it. So painting, because you have to design the sets, sculpture, architecture, because again you have to design the stage, you have to design the auditorium, costumes, again, so the artistry of designing garments, designing costumes. Paint, again, facial painting, the art of, weaving garlands out of flowers, all kinds of things, all kinds of arts are combined in this one art form, Natya. Come down to 2021, cinema has taken the place of Natya because cinema has become a replacement of that art form, which has room in it to take in all the art forms. So again, the artists, the painters, the set designers, the costume designers, everybody is required to make the musicians. I forgot the dancers, the musicians. So drama in India always had these components as well. So if you study just this one text, Natya Shastra, you can understand all about the Indian art, and at the same time, the highest Indian philosophical thought that is reflected in what Bharat Muni speaks about. How should an actor be trained? What should be the right training for a director? What kind of a person become a good producer for drama? Not anybody who has the money can produce a drama. Not anybody can say, oh, I can't find any other job, let me try and become an actor or musician. No, there has to be a very, very rigorous training. And I'm not just speaking of training in the actual art form, but also training to become a better human being. So Natya Shastra speaks very clearly about how a director of a play, how a good actor should have control over one's emotions. Only then he or she can project all the emotions of other characters on the stage, right? The director should have not only the knowledge of how to direct a play, but also the knowledge of the diverse customs that are there in the land. Then one of the other things Natya Shastra speaks about is how actors should not become so arrogant just because they have become popular, that people begin to like them, they have become popular, they should not become arrogant and say whatever comes to their mind and try to fool people, try to take advantage of their popularity. This is so important in today's time and age when actors have become such important influencers on social media. But they need to understand that they cannot abuse that popularity and speak of things that may not be in the interest of the country, that may try to promote certain habits which may not be good. For example, like abuse of nature, something that is against the ecological and the environment, all those kinds of things. So many things in our traditions we find that we have forgotten. If only we find a way to systematically, carefully bring some of these things back and find how they are relevant today, wouldn't that be something so important? Wouldn't that help us understand our culture a little bit more? And I'm just taking one example of Natya. You can take any art form, paintings. There are stories galore that speak of how art, painting is actually a way to connect to the divine. As I said in the beginning, everything can become yoga. All life, all work, we can do it in that spirit of connecting to our highest self. This would be the Indian way of growing through our work, through whatever it is. When we are students, to grow in our dharma as students, to connect with the highest self through our work as a student. So this is, in nutshell, I mean, how much I can summarize in 1 hour, some of the deepest truths of India. Let me take a pause here because there is not that much time left, and I want to see if there are any questions.
Ma'am, it's not a question. It was just that I was sitting with my friend colleague here, Abhijit, and when you said that what is the first text and the first play which was done, like we were actually discussing that it is of course the text of by Bharat Muni Natya Shastra, but so Abhijit made this comment that is it the Shakuntala the first play which was done? So just wanted to ask.
Very good question. No, Shakuntala came much later. That was Kalidas. So that's about 2000 years. That's in the sort of the historical time. The first play, I'll tell you about the first play, because again, that story tells you about another truth of India. That is, you've heard of the play called, or the story of Samudra Manthan?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the first play ever produced. So when Bharat Muni comes up with how play should be put together, what should be, in Natya Shastra you have discussion of, how the stage, what kind of worship should be offered to the stage and things like that. When all these things are put together, so he says, okay, I'm ready to stage my first play. And the first play was Samudra Manthan, the Amrit Manthan, where the Devas and the Asuras come together and churn the ocean. There is a particular airport in the world, and let this be your assignment. Maybe some of you have gone there. There is a particular airport in the world which has a huge sculpture of this churning of the ocean right at the airport lounge. That airport is not in India, strangely. It's somewhere else. It's in another country. So the Devas and the Asuras churn the ocean, and so many things come out of the ocean, including Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, but also a lot of poison comes out in the beginning. And the play ends with Devas becoming victorious. And the story goes that both the Devas, the gods, and the Asuras were invited to watch this play. And when the Asuras came and they saw that the play showed that Asuras have lost, because that's how the story is, they became very unhappy and they became very rowdy, very rude, and they started disrupting the stage. Oh, you are not projecting it correctly. You are not making us look good. we are all very unhappy. So they started disrupting the play and they were asked to leave the auditorium. And since then, the Indra put together like this, he threw a flag as a way to shut these rowdies, they shut these hooligans from the Asura side. And to this day, a lot of traditional theater actors, they put a flag before they start a play, which is a reminder that let everything go well in this performance, that let all the gods be present to make sure that no hooligans, no rowdiness, no disturbance happens while we do this performance. So there is this tradition of worshipping the stage, because that is where you are trying to enact life in all its joys and sorrows. Everything is part of that one truth. Joy, sorrow, happiness, sadness, crying, laughter, everything is considered together as oneness. So it is like creating, just like gods create life on earth, actors create life on the stage. So it is interesting when you think about it. In Indian tradition, we say there are 64 kalas, 64 art forms that a truly civilized human being should develop in oneself. 64 is too many. We don't even have one art form that we perfect in ourselves. And there are art forms like, you've seen people drawing rangoli outside their homes. That is one like art form. All over India, you see this. It is known by different names. In Bengal, it is known as Alpana. In Tamil Nadu, it is known, in Kerala, it is known as Kolam. In northern India, it is known as Rangoli. You make it with colors. You make it with rice flour. You make it with so many things. You make it with flowers as well. Kolam in Kerala. So all these are considered part of the art forms that we should learn. Even hair, doing hair, that is also considered as one of the art forms. And 64 art forms are listed in many texts, including the Kam Shastra. The Kam Sutra also lists these 64 art forms. So, like I said, you pick up anything, you find connections. There are stories about how music came to be. There are stories about how dance came to be. There is a story of Shiva and Parvati. When this dance was composed, it was very masculine. So the Parvati came into picture and she brought what is known as the lasya. So Tandav is the more masculine, the more aggressive kind of dance. And then there is the lasya, the more gentle. Together, dance becomes a combination of the masculine and the feminine. The very strong, bold movements, bold physical gestures, and the very graceful, very feminine, very delicate gestures. So this is how Indian spirit has infused beauty, divinity in all aspects of life. And I haven't even talked about science, mathematics, literature, philosophy, you name it, anything. So I hope some of it has been useful for you, and it has awakened in you some curiosity to know about the spirit of India. Everything that you said in the beginning, that is all India. And yet there is something more to each one of those things, which is that X factor that makes it uniquely Indian, that divinity, that spark of that inner truth behind it. So nothing should be just seen on the surface. When we try to develop that inner vision, when we try to see things a little bit more deeply, we begin to develop that Indianness in us. So I hope some of it makes sense. And I know we have to close, but if there are any quick comments or thoughts, I'll be happy to
Ma'am, I don't
address.
know if any of the student has any question, but I do have one more, if you don't
Yes.
mind.
Please, please go ahead.
So have you come across Pushpamala's work? So she's a contemporary artist.
No, I
Um,
haven't.
so she did her masters from MS University, and then late to her latest part of life now, she is also doing a lot of performance.
Mhm.
A few of her works are actually based on these mythological scripts, stories. One of which is the Sita Haran. So what she
Mm,
basically does is she enacts the story, and then she kinds of design a stage, tries to make it as sensitive as possible with completely amazing costumes, and then there are photo shoots,
mm,
and in the gallery these are showcased as the photo documentation of her contemporary work.
mm,
Somehow, so I'm an artist.
mm,
I also did from MS University, did
mm.
painting, and now I'm also working with fabric and textile, make sculptures.
Okay.
But somehow I just wanted to know, because you are into it, how do you basically see it as, when it comes to contemporary art, using a similar text and mythology, and making the replica of something, and then re-showcasing, representing it as an act of something which has already happened.
Mm,
So
mm,
something which a kind of uh, I keep raising this question to myself, that being an artist, how do I see these works as, how do I read them as, do they again talk about something which is mythological, or do I see it as a contemporary art? Is the lighting or the acting of the actors are more important? Is the lighting more important into it? The actions more important, or what is that essence in this whole concept, which an artist is basically trying to maybe put in front of us? What is that question? So
mm.
something I think
Yeah.
I totally am lost into it.
No, no, I think I get the gist of what you are saying, and I think it's very important. So thank you for bringing that up. I think one of the things we need to do, and I'm not an artist myself. I have an artist in my family. My sister, she's an artist, and she is a product of Delhi College of Art. And when she started there, it was like, my entry into the art world. I was doing my master's at that time, and I used to hang out a lot at Delhi College of Art and be with the artist crowd. I just felt very much at home with these artist people. But I think we have to ask the fundamental question here as to this distinction between what is mythology and what is contemporary. These Some of these questions have to be, I think, put aside, and we have to really go to the essence of and ask the question: why art? What is the purpose of art? If we find that whether as an artist or whether as an aesthete, whether as a rasik, the one who is consuming the art, whether it is, I'm looking at your painting, I'm looking at your sculpture, or I'm watching a film, or I'm watching a theater, or, sitting at a concert, as a rasik or as one who creates art, if we can somehow identify with why art, why, what is it that it is doing to us individually, we might have hit upon some of the truth. And in that sense, it does not have to be old, or it does not have to be contemporary. It can be anything. You can create the scene of Sita Haran in the same costumes that we have imagined Sita might have worn, right? Valmiki Ramayana does not go into too many details of what kind of costumes Sita might have worn. But there may be details of a certain kind of the richness of her costumes, certain kind of abundance, a certain kind of beauty. So if we can recreate that even in a more contemporary costume, it does not make any difference as long as that essence is captured. Same thing with set design. Most of the theatrical set designs in traditional drama, both in Sanskrit as well as in the folk drama, which is very closely aligned with the traditional Sanskrit drama convention. The sets are very simple. There isn't necessarily an idea of exactly recreating what the Bhavan of Rama and Sita would have looked like when Rama goes and tells Sita, look, we cannot have our Rajya Abhishek today because I am actually going to the forest. There is a whole wonderful dialogue in Valmiki Ramayana about that. And there is a description of the abundance and the prosperity that the Mahal, the palace of Rama, is all about. But not necessarily, the nails and bolts of things are there. So if we can capture a sense in our present art form, we can do that. The other thing is, if we look at what is the purpose of art, art is to help both the artist and the rasik, the aesthete, grow in their consciousness, feel a sense of harmony within. It should, a lot of contemporary art, a lot of abstract art, or modern art, whether it is in painting or in other art, music, dance, a lot of it is very jarring on our senses. It actually either titillates or just jars and takes us out of the harmony. Rather, art should help you still your emotions. It should help you bring you to a state of calmness, a state of harmony, a state of peace within. That could be the purpose an artist can keep in front while he or she is creating the art, and when a rasik goes and experiences the art. Walking through a museum of paintings where I'm doing it just so that I can say that I have, I understand, I know these painters, and I can tell you about these names to look cool in a social gathering, that is not what art is supposed to be in the Indian context. So it does not really matter whether you bring it in a contemporary form. What matters is what the artist sees within. So let's take just the example of Ramayana itself. There is Valmiki Ramayana as the original Ramayana, and then there are at least 300 more Ramayans and many, many more that are being written every day. So many writers are taking any episode and retelling the story of Ramayana. Bahubali was one example. Bahubali also took inspiration from Mahabharata, many other texts. So the point is saying, as long as the truth, because there is an eternal truth has to be told again and again in different expressions for different generations, for different people in different times. So that's why we are never bored of the same stories. All the folk dramas in India to this day reenact the same story from Ramayana, Mahabharata, Itihasas. In Delhi, Sri Ram Bharatiya Kala Kendra has been showing Ram Leela for last 50, 60 years. And it is still one of the highest attended theatrical show in Northern India. It's amazing. I mean, you people are not getting bored. Same people go again and again every year to watch this. So there is something, that eternal truth that comes out because it has hit upon that purpose of art. So I hope some of it makes sense.
Yes, it
Juvika ji?
does, ma'am. Yes, it does. It does make sense. Maybe making the replicas of the work also, for example, or just recreating the scene. But yes, you will have the sense and touch of the present today. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is
I mean,
always gonna be mix of the past and today. whether it is.
Because yes, because we are living in a context of time and space, time and cultural context. So naturally, our DNA will be more in aligned with that heritage of which we are a part of. It does not mean that in next life you could be born in Greece and I could be born in Egypt, and we could be drawn into, as a part of our cultural nurturing, we could be drawn into those stories, those heritage. And that would be part of our innermost self's growth, because ultimately all truth is one. And these are different ways in which different cultures, different civilizations have expressed the truth. And as long as our cultural upbringing, our nurturing is in that context, naturally we are drawn to that. And when we try to walk too much away from it, we begin to sense that something is not right. We have to come back to it in order to truly realize that part in ourselves.
I think when you said how these plays were enacted many times, so I think that makes sense to me, because I never questioned if a play is enacted many times, but I have questioned if an artwork like a painting or an installation or a photo documentation maybe and there are replicas done of that. So I think we can also see into a broader context. It does make sense, ma'am.
Yeah. So I know
Thank
we
you
have.
so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your today's session. It was really enlightening, and looking at things from not only on the face value, but understanding them, their deeper meaning, their inner meaning, and connecting them with the idea of India is something that we have learned today. And through art form, through various kind of art forms that we have, various languages, how they developed, how the cultures, how they developed, we have understood a lot according to their inner sense, the inner meaning. And that has really helped us to understand India. And the real thing will start after your session, after attending your session, when we started looking the same things, but in a different way, in a different perspective, from understanding then how the origin took place, and so on and so forth. And it was really a very enlightening session, and I know that the student also wished to say the same.
Yeah.
And on behalf of the students, on behalf of the faculties, on behalf of the university, I would like to give you a vote of thanks for really taking your precious time and enlightening us with your understanding of India, with your ideas of what India is and how each Indian should look at it from various perspectives and aspects. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for inviting me and for this opportunity. I hope some of it has been useful. But like I said, in this compressed time, we can only speak only so much. So, okay, great. And if there is any question from anyone who has left, you can always email me. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Thank you so much, ma'am.